Hi, I'm Chrissy Wozniak. Today I have two guests with me. First is native of Bogota, Colombia, and attended the University of La Salle. He graduated from WKU with a major in agribusiness and ag-economics. He also graduated with a master's degree in animal science. His special interests are dairy sustainability, animal welfare, livestock management, dairy nutrition, Physiology of Lactation, and Ag-Business Management. From DeLaval, I'd like to welcome Global Head of Sustainability, Fabian Bernal. And my other guest is from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. AEM is the leading organization in North America, advancing construction and agriculture equipment manufacturers and the value chain partners in the global marketplace. He's a Wisconsin native that grew up on his family farm, where he still helps raise hay and livestock today. His role with AEM is to serve as the liaison for AEM's dairy manure management, specialty crops, and sprayer equipment groups. He also works with agriculture members to help address and solve various industry issues. I would like to welcome Director of Agriculture Services at AEM, Austin Gellings. So welcome, Austin and Fabian, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us.
So first of all, great. So first of all, let's talk about a bit about your backgrounds. Fabian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, my name is Fabian Bernal. I work as Global Head of Sustainability for DeLaval, working mostly in the strategy development and the application of sustainable practices across the organization, from both from the industrial point of view, but also the application at farm level, and how do we support farmers with technology, innovation, services, education, and so much more. My background, I grew up at a dairy farm. I am a farmer today, and I also deal with activities and application of sustainability right here in my own farm in Kentucky, where I live with my family. Again, I work for a Swedish company called DeLaval, part of the Laval group, and I've been involved in sustainability for near 12 years now.
Awesome. And Austin?
Yes, Austin Gellings, as you mentioned. So at AEM here, really involved in everything that we do that's agricultural related. We spend a lot of time really trying to promote technology as a part of that sustainability story and message across all sectors. I work primarily in agriculture, but when you look at just equipment in general, whenever you talk about any type of sustainability practice, equipment plays a huge role in implementing those practices. So that's a lot of what we do here at the association. Similar to Fabian, I still farm to this day on my family farm. Grew up there here in southeastern Wisconsin. So as Fabian mentioned, it's great to be able to practice what we preach a little bit as well when we're telling these sustainability stories.
Right, that's important, very important. And you've completed a study together with some partners that addresses the incredible advances in the dairy industry in the last few decades. So can you give me some insight on who was involved in the story and the background about why it was done, really?
Yeah, so this actually began quite a while ago. So about 2 years ago, we actually released kind of the first version of this study, which was titled "The Environmental Benefits of Precision Ag Study," which aimed to do the same thing that this study did, just with a row crop focus, focusing on things like variable rate technologies, in a cornfield or something like that. And we quantified the benefits associated with those technologies. And that study was wildly successful. It gained a lot of traction in a lot of different areas and really helped lead to make some progress on the front of telling the sustainability story for farmers and row crops. And so based off that success, we really wanted to build off that and continue that momentum. And we said, what's the next logical step? And dairy kind of emerged from that forefront. We actually have a dairy equipment leadership group, which consists of executives from the major dairy companies like DeLaval. And they said, hey, dairy really, especially in mainstream media, doesn't always get the most positive messaging when there's really actually a great story to tell, especially from this equipment standpoint. When you look at farm management practices, genetics, things like that. There's maybe a little bit more of a story there to tell. But from that equipment standpoint, there was maybe a little bit of a gap. And so we wanted to really help fill that gap and then tell that whole story. So as we began to go down that road and put this study together, we also worked with Dairy Farmers of America and National Milk Producers Federation, so that we were representing the entire dairy industry, right? We didn't just want to represent, the equipment manufacturers. We wanted to make sure that we were taking in input from and telling the story of the farmers themselves, so that, we were representing everybody that's involved.
Yeah, great points. And it does address like some impressive comparisons to dairy farming from 2007. And when one thing that's really important to I guess realize or understand, especially people outside of the industry, is that farmers often feel vilified. And I think it's more due to, animal and environmental extremists, right? It's not everybody thinks like that, but that is kind of the feeling that you get when you do talk to farmers. And often they don't want to talk about the successes just because, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth being villains, right? For producing food for the world. It's just a little bit crazy, right? But what you guys have really laid out is this comparison of how far we've come in just a few years, and it's really incredible. So one thing that really stood out to me is the amount of milk that can be produced with nearly 1 million fewer cows. So how is that even possible?
So I think I will take this one, and to be perfectly honest, the dairy industry, and especially dairy farmers, are committed to sustainability, to the environment, to their communities, to their cows, right? And in fact, they have set goals for neutrality in terms of carbon neutrality by 2050 through the Innovation Center of U.S. Dairy and many other organizations, right? But they have made tremendous improvements. I mean, we have increased milk production by 19% since 2007. We have reduced the feed utilized for that by 15%. We have reduced land use by 26%. The greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced near 18%, 17 point something, and the water use reduced by 10%. So if we were to put this into context and make somewhat of an analysis, our production has continues to improve. We reduce the feed intake, but we can do some really important numbers here. For example, if I was to put the production or the reduction of feed by 15%, that equals to about 3,200 NFL football stadiums of amount
Wow.
of feed or less use on this, or we have reduced the amount of cropland of the size of Maryland complete, or the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by the same amount that would be produced by 4 million vehicles that are in the road every day. And when we talk to water is very difficult to measure, and it's a very difficult part of it, and actually is one of the single most important feed ingredients and nutrients for animals as well as for us. And we have reduced the amount of water per year that could supply enough water to the whole New York City for 2 years. So what farmers are doing is fantastic. Is a commitment to the environment, is commitment to feeding a world that continues to work to grow, that is a hungry world in desperate need for nutrient dense foods. And just 2 weeks ago, we hit 8 billion people, and by 2050, we are going to be looking at about 9.4 billion people. And that means we have to increase the amount of food that we have to produce. Granted, we waste a lot of it, but I do believe that dairy and the nutrient density around the dairy and the way we are including technology and adding into the efficiency and the welfare of the animals and the care for the environment is something to celebrate and to actually publish a little bit more about this. This is the strength of this report and this study, is to better explain this great story of dairy, but back it up with data, back it up with science, and show the world that things are happening and are happening in a proper way at dairy level.
And I
Right.
think just to build off and kind of just reiterate what Fabian had said, I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing more with less. I mean, I think that's really what this study points to. You know, we're producing more milk with less environmental impact, with less feed usage, with less water usage, with less emissions output, and that's really the story of the industry moving forward as well. I mean, when you look towards where are we going to go, how are we going to reach those numbers by 2050, and how are we going to feed this growing population while doing it sustainably? At the end of the day, it's just doing more with less. And that's really what some of these technologies allow farmers to do.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And feed ration and quality is a great determinant of milk quality and yield. In modern technology, like for example, harvesters that have the ability to test forage as it's being harvested, have made a really huge difference in providing like the consistency of balanced ration for cows. So, what are some of the other ways that technology has helped with feeding consistency and quality?
Well, there's a lot to be discussed around this point of feeding technologies, and it all starts by applying technology on how do we produce this feed, how do we bring nutrients and grow feed in appropriate manner in the right amounts, and pick those and harvest those at the right moment, and delivering those as well to the animals at the right amounts and the right ways to do so. If we were to really discuss technology, about 6% of this 25% or close to 27% increase in feed or in milk yields, 6% can be added to technology use. But in the feeding part is absolutely incredible what we're doing today.
And I would say, just to build off of what Fabian mentioned a little bit, and I think started to allude to, is technology. One of the things technology does outside of just allowing us to actually do things more efficiently is it's constantly gathering data. And then that data can be then taken back to make better decisions about how we grow our feed, how we harvest our feed, how we feed our animals. And those gains just kind of start to snowball as you start to go down that path.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what about genetics? How far have we come in the last few decades in increasing efficiency of production by selecting genetic traits? And which traits have contributed the most to this increase in production?
Well, the discussion of genetics is quite deep. And actually, I believe that we have not reached or gained all the opportunities there. We have learned a lot from genetics, the application of higher yields, but at the same time, genetics that give or add to the quality of feed, to the quantity of production, to the efficiency on how the animals are utilizing this feed that we're producing, that we're giving to them. And ultimately, productivity is absolutely incredible. If we were to continue in the same path, cows have the potential to go almost double the quantity of milk or efficiency of production of they have today. But if we were to push forward, I think there is a lot more potential now. We have to balance that with good animal care, good feed, and more so. But genetically, the potential is still there, and there is much more to be found. We continue to find parts through genomic analysis in which we can determine animals' potential before we even get to the productivity side. And
Right.
that way, we can make decisions, faster decisions on how this animal will go through the value chain and how the productivity life of these animals will look like. And even extending that productivity life depending on this data and this information and this genetics that we're learning from. So there is so much more to learn. This is a great conversation that can go for a long interview.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, genetics is so fascinating. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would maybe just add as well. I think, the key part of the key to fully unlocking genetics is, like, not selling a broken record, but that data piece as well. making sure we're feeding the cow the right amount, milking her the right amount, watering her the right amount, or even, going into preventative health based off of things like activity monitors and those types of technologies that give us insight to the health of the cow, so that we're being, proactive rather than reactive. And all of those things, again, play into, truly unlocking the full genetic potential of the animal.
Great points. And, I remember back to when I was a kid and everyone had tie style barns, and think of the advances that have happened since those days, with new rotaries and then with robotics and automated milkers, which is really starting to be adopted quite a lot now. And so, how is that increased precision, profitability, and also cow comfort on the farm? So, can you talk about that?
Yeah, the implementation and the road of technology application, especially in the US, is quite interesting. And alongside this application, we have seen a continuous improvement alongside the animal care, the best practices, the productivity, the best ways we apply this data coming back and reporting back to farmers and making decisions about how we can best do these activities and which ones are best for the cow as much as for productivity. So it is quite important to see that the application of technology has driven efficiency, have driven health, has driven best practices, has driven a new level of technology and knowledge at the farm level. So the knowledge transfer and what is needed today for farmers to and their employees to address when interacting with these technologies is incredible. And the
Mhm.
feedback that these technologies give, this instant feedback, so they can make best decisions for the animals, best decisions for their businesses, is right there. So this is what truly is driving this change and driving this application. And farmers are starting to understand, okay, I can make these decisions a little faster. We get into the point that today we have technologies that are preemptive health, that are telling us that an animal might be getting sick before we see any clinical issues. So farmers can make decisions faster and reduce even the utilization of medications, antibiotics, and many other things. So what technology grants us is a better life for all involved, including cows, employees, farmers, everybody.
And I think that last point is really important. I think when you talk about something like that, you focus on the animal, right? But it really does, the farmer's quality of life too
Yeah.
improves a great amount, because I mean, just if you look at it from just your day-to-day work, it used to be you had to be there in the morning to milk the cow and there at night to milk the cow. Well, in this robotic system, and some of them, you can step away for maybe a day or so and you'll be fine. And you can actually take a little bit of time away from the farm to just focus on yourself or focus on something else. And so from that aspect as well, the farmer's quality of life, there's also a nice story to tell there.
Yeah, those are excellent points because, a lot of people don't want to get into farming because of that life, that demanding life. So, and especially if you can train good people on the equipment as well, that does allow them to step away a little bit. And you also touched on the data issue as well, and how that helps with decision making. And there's massive amounts of data that are now collected on farm. So what are some ways that the data does assist in decision making? And then how can a producer leverage all of this information coming in, but without becoming too overwhelmed?
Yeah, smart systems is the best way to explain this. The way we are giving feedback back to the farmer, where it's not just a data point and just a bunch of numbers, but a way to make decisions, a way to take the next step on the next practice. If it's time for vaccinations, if it's time for a new treatment, if it is time for taking an action because an animal, the smart systems are telling us, well, this cow might not be walking as normal, or this cow is not acting as normal, or is not ruminating as she used to do. You may want to go there and take a look at this animal and let the farmer make the decision. But the fact is that we're allowing the decision making to happen a lot faster.
Right.
This actually has tremendous influence in the well-being of the animal. So we're passing from these visual inspections to also having data associated and making best decisions for all involved.
And I would maybe just add, I think you mentioned, how do farmers handle this quantity of data that they're being given, because we're collecting it from all angles now. And I think it's just really important, if a farmer is just starting to enter into this space, just focus on one area. You don't have to tackle it all at once. Focus on one area, get really good at that, and then maybe think about moving to the next step, because otherwise you're just going to become overwhelmed and not know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, just try to pick one thing at a time and slowly move forward and add. Then that's great advice. And how does North America compare to other nations around the world in efficiency and profitability of the industries?
Well, U.S. is single most efficient country around the world, and in terms of productivity, we're still ahead of many, right? If not in the top two. The fact is that if we were to have access to technologies in a faster way in the US, we'd probably be much more ahead. And even though we have such restrictions on the ways we integrate technology into the agriculture, and in this case into dairy, and we are what we are doing, can you imagine if we were to integrate some other technologies, some other pieces to the equation that can lead us into the next level? And to be honest, to this point, we have picked all the low-hanging fruits. And it's this time, in this moment of time, we have to start looking at what are the next steps. And that deals with technology. And that next level technology is quite hard to get it into the US. Just as a simple example, robotics weren't certified until a few years ago. So we are almost 35 years behind in the application of robotics into the dairy in the US, yet we are the most efficient. So can you imagine if we can move this ahead, and I think we are in a path of continuous improvement that will yield us a lot more than what we are doing today. So it is quite exciting. This conversation leads to a lot more policy. It leads to discussions about how and which technologies should come in. How do we control some of these things, but how do we apply a little bit faster? Farmers need this support. Farmers need this visibility for new technologies and make those accessible to them, both financially, but also through regulation and so much more.
And so just to put a few numbers to what Fabian had said, North American producers produce 15% of the world's milk with 4% of the cows. And over the last 60 or so years, we've improved our milk yield by about 3.5 times.
Wow.
Compared to the rest of the world, which is only sitting at 1.5 times. And all of this is still with relatively low adoption rates, because it's a little bit more difficult to get technology over here than compared to other areas of the world. So just think about how much more room we still have to grow if we're doing all of this with still relatively low adoption rates.
Yeah, for sure. And the study does a really good job of that forecasting the potential future benefits as well. So what's on the horizon then? How much better can it actually get? You both touched on this a little bit. And what are some of the goals that look attainable in the near future?
If we were to really think about this, there's a lot of space in milk yield. We could expect 10% or more, 11% or so by 2030, increase in productivity per animal, tapping into that genetic potential of the animals, and also the inclusion of new technologies. When it comes to feed, we could reduce up to 19% the feed required. Why? Because we know now how to feed properly and at the right time, as Austin mentioned before, and tapping on the genetic potential from the start for these animals. Land use, probably 10% or so less land use as we reduce the amount of feed required. And probably the one that is the most interest for many, probably about 20% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by then, especially when we're talking about methane and technologies that are coming here in how to handle methane from manure all the way to the cow and enteric methane and so many other pieces, right? Nutrient management, so many pieces more. And water, I would say, again, I believe water is quite difficult to measure and quite difficult to analyze. But I think we can go even farther, probably 4 to 5%, as the study suggests. I think we have even farther more to go in that, but the opportunities are there, and we can continue on and on with the ultimate goal of becoming net zero, as the U.S. industry has agreed, and I think there is the possibility to get there. There will have to be a lot more to be implemented. There will have to be a agreement in some things, but I do believe that we have that potential to go and continue on.
And so, those numbers that Fabian mentioned are just looking out 8 years. I mean, so if you look at what we've done over the last 15 years, in some of these areas, we're doing more than we've done over the last 15 years, potentially in the next 8 years. And those numbers, we're not saying that we have to get to, 100% adoption rates or anything like that. That's just if we continue on the trend from the last 15 years or so, because the curve is just, it's going up, and we're going faster with more innovation and finally, bringing this innovation and putting it in the hands of the farmers and starting to, overcome some of those barriers to adoption. And I know you had asked as well, what's kind of the key to unlocking all of this moving forward. I think the next frontier is going to continue to be data, and just figuring out ways to better leverage data on the farm and make better decisions as a result of it.
Yeah, great points again. And I think it's important too for producers and all of us in the industry to really kind of commit some of these numbers to memory, so that when we do feel attacked, then we can have this data at our fingertips, so that we can say, no, that's not true. And here are the real numbers. So I think this study that you've put out is really great, because it's bite-sized data that we can arm and have kind of in our arsenal as people within the industry. And anybody that's watching or listening, will include that study in the show notes, so you can link directly to it and take a look at it yourself, and really just have maybe 2 or 3 of those numbers just stored away in your head for those conversations where you just need something, a real numbers to say, look at how far we've come. And that, it isn't that animals are destroying the earth, and look at what we've done so far. And I think that's amazing. And you guys did a great job on the study.
Thank you.
And I have
Thank
one
you.
last question for each of you. Why do you serve the ag industry? What's your greatest passion? What gets you up in the morning? And Fabian, do you want to start?
Absolutely. I just have this love and passion for cows. I just think they are incredible. And when you look at the community associated to dairy production and the families that are involved in this, it just drives this passion of understanding what is it that business looks like? Why is it going in this fashion? What are their challenges? How can, as a whole, we can make all of this better? But
Yeah.
what is most interesting to me is this incredible animal that we still don't completely understand, that has a tremendous potential. Actually, if we were to go back in history, cows are the mothers of humankind, and during the greatest times, that's what propel a lot of things that we are doing today, and propel a lot of things. So I'm just terribly I guess, curious about what else would happen in this industry. I am involved in agriculture. It's my life. It's my passion. It's what drives my family and everything I do. So, anyways, cows, community, the planet, all this together is just so intriguing and fascinating.
Great answer.
And I don't know how I can follow that up much better, but I mean, my grandpa used to tell me, you can take the farmer off the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the farmer. And it's just 100% true. If you grow up in this industry, you have a passion, and it follows you for the rest of your life. And I mean, just being able to, tell the story about the men and women like myself and like my family, 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, is extremely rewarding, and being able to show and demonstrate that we're doing the right things. We haven't always done it perfect, and I don't think any farmer is going to try to say we've always done it perfect, but to show that we take sustainability and the environment in our communities as a serious matter, I think is something we have to continue to do, because at the end of the day, the goal of any farmer, most farmers, is to eventually hand that farm down. Most farmers want to see that pass on to the next generation, and you're not going to do that if you're not sustainable. And so just getting that message out there, and letting people who haven't grown up in this industry know that, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's really awesome. So thank you both for joining me today. Thank you so much for your time and your passion and energy for this industry. Great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who's watching or listening. If you want to learn more, as I said before, the links are all provided in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, or AgFuse channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And have a great day.